Now, let's talk about technical specifications. You have to communicate to the producers, the production company. You have to communicate how you want to receive your footage and how you want to receive your information. There are standard ways of doing things, but you often have to request it a certain way if you want it. So, for example, you have to let them know that you're editing on Avid, because they might assume that you're editing on Final Cut Pro. Oh, I thought you were cutting on Final Cut Pro. So we just had the on-set DIT convert all the footage to this type of QuickTime. You know, that's what we did in the last movie. It worked fine. You know, you want to tell them that before they start shooting so that they can figure out, is that going to be hard to do? Is it going to be a problem? You don't want to wait until you get the footage and find out, oh my God, this is formatted for someone who's going to edit probably in Premiere. Well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do, because the director's already calling me and saying, did you look at the footage? And then I have to tell him, well, no, I didn't look at the footage. It's going to take another day because it was sent in the wrong format. That's not the answer that he or she wants to hear. Okay, we needed an Avid format. What resolution? We needed an Avid DNX HD 36 or 115. You have to be specific. Tell them what you need. And I don't expect you all to remember this because there are a lot of details, but I tell you just so that you see that there are things to consider and think about. I have an example here from a movie I worked on called We Own the Night. This is a movie shot on film. We work in a way, as I've mentioned, that is a blueprint. What I do on the Avid is not the final picture. It is a blueprint, a template that will be conformed and mastered later. The picture will be conformed and mastered later. The sound will be mastered later. How will someone else take the original files and how will they match what I did? Well, they're not going to do that by eye. They have to do it based on time code, metadata, information regarding the camera roll. There's all sorts of information that's important. And this information is often embedded in the files, as maybe you guys have experienced, but it is also sometimes important to burn it into the picture, because that's something that visually you may want to see, or visually when you make a QuickTime for your sound editor, they may want to have this or refer to it. You'll find that these little time code windows are things that all the departments use in different ways. Every shot in the movie has data, and you need that data in order to know where this frame comes from. You know, because it's not something that you can, that everyone will know instantly. You have to be able to track every single frame. Different editors have different opinions about where they want those windows. You know, just like sound department doesn't like to have windows be this way or that way. So these are things to think about too. So for example, when we're about to shoot a movie, I or my assistant editors will have to talk to the lab facility who is giving me the film, and I have to say, well, this is how I want it prepared. And here I have this data up here. I want to have it in the right-hand side of the frame. I don't want it down here. I want it up there. And I want the sound time code. I want this burned in so I could see it visually on the left side. And maybe I don't need to know that, but definitely my assistants might need to know that, because you know, a sound editor might call my assistant and say, hey, I'm looking for the sound for this shot. You know, do you know what it is? We can't find it, there's a problem. And my assistant can say, well, it says that it's this time code. Again, you have to be able to track every single element that's used in making the movie. You have power to ask for these things. You know, it isn't always just that you get the footage and you get what you get. Sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes that is what happens. But I just want to empower you to think in terms of trying to make your job easier and trying to make the job easier for for the other people you work with? What would be helpful? What would be more efficient? You have a right, in some cases, to ask. You don't always get what you ask for, but you can ask. This movie is shot in this aspect ratio, 2:4:0. That's scope, or called CinemaScope, widescreen. That's the widest format, standard format that movies have. That's a standard. But they shot it in a way that there's more information on the top and the bottom. And that is actually this aspect ratio. So, you know, as an editor, I have to also tell the facilities, the labs who are processing the footage, okay, this is how I want it. Because they may say, well, you know, this is the format here, so we're just going to put a black letterbox on the top and the bottom because that's the way you intend it, right? This is going to be the framing, right? You're not going to use the top and the bottom. Well, I might say, you know what? I want to see all the image because when I'm editing, I might, or the director might not like that framing. I want to see every single piece of exposed area so that if the director wants it or me, if I think it's right for the story, I can actually reposition it. I can bring it down. I can say, my director might say, oh, you know, we couldn't frame, you know, the framing is so bad, I don't want to use this take. You know, and it might be a problem because I say, oh, why, you know, but the take is so good. This is the best performance we have. The director's like, I don't like the framing, it's terrible. But I can say, no problem, let me reframe it. Let's see, I got a little room up here, I got some headroom, let me just move it down. And then we can use the shot. So you know, you want to have all the tools that you can. And so these are the sort of very specific things that you get into. And again, we haven't even started cutting the movie yet, but we're already getting into this. I like to send emails out to say hello to all the different key department heads. When I say all of them, I mean camera department, the sound mixer on set who's going to record the sound, the script supervisor. Those are the three key ones I like to reach out to. I'll send them an email and I'll say, hello from Tom Cross. And I'll say, you know, hey, I just wanted to check to see if, you know, what format you're going to film in. Is it possible for your camera department to provide my department with a frame and focus, what they call a racking leader, because I want to know how the cinematographer is seeing the image, because in my editing room, I want to be able to present the image in terms of the composition the way the cinematographer intends. And so one way of helping that is to ask for what they call a frame and focus leader. I'm not the cinematographer, so it would seem like it's not my responsibility or not my job. But when I'm setting up my editing room and I'm setting up my monitor, how do I know that I'm looking at it the right way? How do I know that I have the right framing? Maybe the lab, when they process the footage, maybe it was resized and I'm actually missing some information. How do they know how to set up the film if it's shot on film or digital? How do they know how to present it? They know because you have something like this. And this is something that camera departments on a movie, feature film, and TV, often they will, most of the time they'll shoot this, but sometimes you have to really push them to get something like this. And it's something they shoot, and it actually gives you the frame lines of what the composition should be. So this is in 2:3:5, which is in the CinemaScope widescreen format. I'll give you a great example. On the movie La La Land, Damien Chazelle wanted to film in a slightly different aspect ratio than the normal widescreen. He wanted to film in a wider aspect ratio. It's very minor, it's hard to tell the difference, but that's just how detail-oriented he is. He wanted to shoot his movie, La La Land, in what's called 2:5:5, which is wider than normal. And it's because he wanted to emulate the original widescreen aspect ratio of movies, Hollywood movies from the 1950s and the 1960s, when they used to actually have wider frames. And so he and his cinematographer, Lena Sandgren, shot the movie in 2:5:5. They gave me a chart where the lines actually said 2:5:5, but we also decided it'd be helpful to show what the framing would be if it was 2:3:5, 2:4:0. And so it actually had two sets of lines in it. This is important to keep in mind because sometimes when you show the movie in theaters, they might not have a screen big enough to show 255. It may just be 240. And so it's helpful to know the differences when you're editing. And sometimes if there's a question, well, let's see, you know, where would it be in a normal theater? Okay, it might be here. So those things are helpful. So you get this, if the camera department shoots this, the facility, the lab can get this, and they can put this at the head of every shot or the head or can give it to you as a separate file. And you can then verify, you can look at your video, and this is something your assistant should do. It's really more their responsibility, but it's something you should be aware of. And they can look at look at this and say, okay, well, I see the lab, their image actually seems to be correct. Okay, so that's good. We know they're giving it to us, it's correct. Now, when we set up our monitors, we just have to make sure that it's correct. And sometimes when you put up your video on your TV, it doesn't always match. Sometimes you're either losing information or maybe you actually start to see a little bit more. That's something that you have to kind of then correct. And on these little monitors, like a monitor like this, that might mean you do any number of things. Sometimes you'll take black tape and you'll literally put tape on a monitor to tape off the top and the bottom. Sometimes in the Avid, you'll work with a digital mat to mat off your digital image. That's usually what I do. I put a mat in the Avid, but I can always turn it off if I want to see the top and the bottom, if there is a top and the bottom. These are called focus wheels. The reason they have this is so not only you can try to get better focus with a projector, but also you can see, and this is why I like to have charts with focus wheels, you can actually see whether the image is being squeezed or not, or stretched. And that's especially key with digital. It's especially key with the way TVs are, with monitors. You don't always know exactly if the image is being manipulated in some sort of ways. You don't want to be working with a director and have it look wrong. You know, you don't want to work months down the road and then the director says, oh, the cinematographer is going to come over today. We want to show him the movie. And he watches the movie and you say, why does it look all wrong? You know, yeah, you know, like, how's the movie? Isn't it great? Yeah, but you guys have been editing it wrong the whole time. That's not the way the picture should look. You don't want that to happen. You want to make sure that you try to see the image in terms of composition, the way the cinematographer has framed it. So this is a really important thing to keep in mind. I'm taking all these responsibilities and I'm putting them on your shoulders as editors, but these are things that you have to kind of consider. This is specifications for 8mm home movie film that was used for the movie. They didn't shoot the whole movie in this format, but it was just selected scenes. So you can see it gets very detailed. I tell, this is directed to the laboratory facility who is going to process the footage and then prepare it in a certain format for me. So I tell them, here's the original picture you're going to get. It's going to be Super 8 film, color, et cetera, and it's going to be shot without sound. So there will be no sound element. Please telecine, that means transfer the above elements, and provide these formats, HD, 1080p, digital files, etc., ProRes, etc., and it should be at this format, 23976 frames per second. Please transfer entire continuous camera rolls, etc., and then I show them what the image should look like in terms of framing it. This 178 represents the HD frame that I'm going to see in the Avid. This represents how the movie will end up being framed probably. Obviously, I can reposition it north or south, up or down. A lot of decisions, choices, and details that you might consider. I took the time to create this so that they would understand the details of what I was talking about, because of what you find when you're communicating with other departments, it's really helpful to give examples. It's helpful to be very clear. One way of being clear is to give examples like this, because believe me, if people can get it wrong, they will get it wrong. And it's not because they don't care, or not, sometimes they don't care, but it's not because people don't want to do it right. It's just because there are so many different ways of doing things. It's very easy to miss details. If you can be as clear as possible, that helps. I also get into how I want the files named, because it'll help my assistants or me find something later. I don't have to accept whatever they just give me. So the first part of the name should be an abbreviation of the name of the movie, FAM. The second part should be the date of the film when it's transferred. The third part of the name should be the number of the Super 8 transfer reel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things are going to help my department keep track of where this piece of film is from. What day was it shot on? Well, these are things that are helpful to know. Sometimes in terms of what day something was shot on, sometimes when the director comes in to work with you, the director will say, what about that shot? What about that piece of film? You know, I know we shot it. We shot it on the third day in the garage. Show me all of the material from the third day in the garage. Well, I usually have no idea what he's talking about, but I need to be able to figure out either myself directly, or I need to be able to go to my assistant editor and say, you know what, Damien wants all the footage. Where can I find this footage? He wants all the footage that was shot on the third day in the garage. You know, they only shot 3 days in that garage setting, and I need to look at all the stuff from the third day because he knows that that's when he did this particular thing he's looking for. And my assistant needs to be able to find it. So you come up with all these little details that are going to help you organize the material, help your assistants organize the material. And this is how detailed it gets.